You're listening to the 12 Days of Christmas. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
And I suppose technically this is slightly beyond the 12 Days of Christmas, but we're including Epiphany this year. In this celebration, we want to observe Epiphany. And while I don't think it's technically one of the 12 days of Christmas, but we're still sharing the hymns during this season as well, and excited to look at a great Epiphany hymn. Joining us today, the Reverend Dr. James Marriott, Director of Music Arts at Concordia Seminary, St. Louis. Dr. Marriott, thank you so much for joining us for this special time, 12 Days of Christmas on KFUO.
It is always fun to be here and love spending time with you guys, so thanks for the opportunity.
Well, we are privileged to have some time to talk with you. And I think if my notes are correct, this is the first time that we've gotten a chance to talk with you since officially becoming the Reverend Dr. James Marriott.
That's
is that
right? Yeah, I finished the program at the seminary and was ordained in August at our opening service, and really feel honored to have gone through the process and the program, and now have the opportunity to kind of serve at the seminary and the St. Louis community as well, as a pastor, and helping out a church as a little pastoral assistant too. So it's fun to be able to serve and to use the gifts that I have for God's glory, and really thankful for my studies at the seminary. I really enjoyed interacting with the students, and our faculty are just top notch. So learning at their feet was really a privilege, and I loved every minute of it.
Well, thanks be to God, and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
All right. So our hymn today, The Star Proclaims. If you're using Lutheran Service Book, it's number 399. What do we know? What do you know about this hymn? Who wrote this hymn?
Yeah, actually, the story behind this hymn is really fascinating. It's probably one of the oldest texts in the hymnal. It's written in the 5th century by a guy named Sedilius, and it was translated by Luther, and then finally in our hymnal we have it by John Mason Neale as part of the Oxford movement. So it's been part of the Christian church and part of Christian hymnody for a long time. And it was written back in the 5th century as part of a larger poem that kind of talks about the whole life of Christ. It's an alphabetic poem, and it goes through the whole story of who Jesus is and what Jesus does. That's really a fascinating hymn.
Yeah, it's really cool that we have these hymns that are parts of bigger works, especially from that time period in the church. Do you know anything about Sedilius, the author of this hymn?
Yeah, I did a little research on him because I didn't know much before, and there's not much to say. Like we actually don't know much more about him other than the writings that we have. And I think it was, I forget if it's Jerome or who had referenced him, some of his works. But yeah, there was not much history that I could find on him outside of some of the writings that he had done, including this particular hymn. The hymn was designed, or it's used most often during Vespers, throughout Epiphany, and on Epiphany itself. And it makes a really nice Epiphany hymn because it really sets up Christ's birth and incarnation and into his ministry as well and what he will do. So it's just it's a great poem that has lasted the test of time and still continues to serve the church today.
Mm-hmm. So let's dig into the text. Tell us what we're looking at in this text.
Yeah, so actually, right off the bat, this is pretty interesting. What happens with the first line in our hymnal? It says, "The star proclaims the King is here, but Herod, why this senseless fear?" So already there's some unique things that are happening with this hymn. First, we're talking about Herod, which we don't usually do. Herod kind of he's not a very popular part of this story, and actually there's a lot of tragedy that goes into Herod's story and what happens with the innocents at the time of Jesus' birth. So in the original text, though, it actually starts with Herod. Why Herod? Why impious Herod? Do you fear vainly? And here the text, the English text that we have in the hymnal, starts with Jesus, which is good Lutheran practice. We want to start with Jesus, but it really the author here is just kind of bewildered at why Herod would have this vain and impious, and here our translation, this senseless fear. Why are you fearing the Christ who has come, who brings heavenly, his heavenly birth seeks not the kingdoms of this earth. Like Jesus is not seeking your throne. Jesus is coming for a higher purpose, and it poetically captures kind of just the unfortunate nature of Herod and his leadership and all the tragedy that comes from it. So that's one really interesting thing about this text, is that it references Herod right away. The hymn actually comes, it's a continuation of a larger hymn, and we have another part of it. Actually, it's LSB 385, From East to West, which also was not very familiar to me. During the Christmas season, we don't get the chance to sing that very often with all of the other Christmas carols. But if you see how the story progresses, it tells of Jesus's birth, and then it picks up the story here with this 399, the star proclaims the king is here. And then it goes from here as an epiphany hymn from Herod all the way through Jesus's ministry. So it picks up after Herod, and now it's talking about the wise men. In the second stanza, the eastern sages saw from far and followed on his guiding star, and led by light to light they trod, and by their gifts confessed their God. And that's a beautiful reminder for us of the confession that those eastern sages make by the gifts that they give, and the connections of the gold and the frankincense and the myrrh. And how they point to Jesus' kingship, but also to the higher purpose for what he will do, which is his life and crucifixion and resurrection for us. And then it goes to the Jordan, and the third stanza is talking about Jesus' baptism. And the fourth stanza talks about Jesus' changing water into wine, his first miracle. And here, the fourth stanza, just a beautiful English rendering. And oh, what miracle divine when water reddened into wine. That's just, I don't know that I ever, thought that it would have been red wine that the water turned into. I always thought it might be white wine, but here we have water reddened into wine. I think that's a lovely image. He spoke the word, and forth it flowed in streams that nature ne'er bestowed. And then the hymn ends with a Trinitarian stanza, which is typical also of the Oxford movement in that time period. Yeah, so a very rich hymn, just a beautiful text, and one that isn't often sung, but really frames the story of Epiphany very well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. And we do have From East to West. We have a recording of From East to West in our library, actually from a local St. Louis artist. Aaron Bodie has a modern recording of that hymn.
Oh, I did not know that. I'll have to look that up. That's really lovely.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about the text. What about the tune that usually this hymn is sung to?
Yeah, actually, I don't know the story of how this tune would have come to be associated with this text. The tune is a Reformation tune. But so maybe it might have been associated with it in Luther's day, but I don't know. But in our hymnal, 385 is From Heaven Above to Earth I Come. And it seems to me that would also be a very nice melody to carry over to this as well, and to sing it to this tune. But the tune that it's given is the tune that we know from "Oh, bless this house, whate'er befall," so that's the tune. And it was not, I don't know that there's any clear association with the text itself, but it's a very singable tune, very lovely, and very familiar to many Lutheran audiences.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything in particular you really enjoy about this this hymn or the text or the tune or all the whole package of this one?
Yeah, any hymn that can, frame all of Epiphany and the whole Epiphany season and the initial ministry of Jesus, I really appreciate those. And we have so many of them in our hymnal that really kind of trace through Jesus' steps early in ministry. And so I really appreciate that about this hymn, that it frames the season for us and it makes it very usable. You could use this even before Epiphany on Holy Innocents. You could use it, on Epiphany itself. You could use it through the Epiphany season because it is able to reference so many of the events of the Epiphany season. So it's a very versatile hymn. And some of the poetic nuance of it is very lovely and very memorable.
Beautiful hymn. Wish we got to sing it more. As you pointed out, there are more opportunities for us to sing it, not just on Epiphany Day, but today is a great day to sing it, and hopefully you'll have that opportunity.
How do we ever sing all the hymns? That I haven't figured that out in my life yet. And that's where the beauty of singing hymns at home really comes in. If you can, have a hymnal at home and sing with your family and find these recordings. Again, I want to check out that Aaron Bodie recording. But, find these things and really make hymns part of your devotional life because they're so rich and they speak so profoundly to, who God is and what God is doing through his son, Jesus Christ, in the world. So, yeah.
Amen. Amen. Mm-hmm. Our guest today, the Reverend Dr. James Marriott, Director of Music Arts, Concordia Seminary, St. Louis. Dr. Marriott, thank you so much for looking at this Epiphany hymn with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity and God's blessings to you both.
You're listening to the 12 Days of Christmas. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.